What's up, everybody? Hoang Zero here, and today we are going to be discussing the ban list that just came out for Ultimate Cup this morning. Today I'm joined by Tesero. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Tesero. I've been streaming on Twitch lately. Come check me out, Tesero DCG.
Yeah, and Tesero is an absolutely fantastic player. He has been doing absolutely fantastic in these most recent events. He got one of the earliest Beelzemon tops in the BT12 format as well, and just overall is an amazing player. Absolutely one of the best, if not the best, purple player that I personally know of. But yeah, so this morning we got a very abrupt ban list for Ultimate Cup August through September, and I'm just gonna say it. This is a very very drastic ban list from what we've seen before, because a lot of decks that were pretty powerful actually just got the kneecap, and a couple of cards actually got unhit as well. So going down the list in order, unrestricted, Grandkuwagamon is now off the list. Grandkuwagamon is now at 4 copies, and as you all know, if you remember BT 11, Grandis was an absolute powerhouse of the deck. But before I get into my thoughts, Tester, I wanted to know, do you have any thoughts at all on the matter of Grandkuwagamon?
Yeah, this is a really interesting unhit, especially with the upcoming hits. You can probably pretty much see this being a pretty prominent hit or a pretty prominent deck going into it.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, I nothing immediately comes to mind as decks that like shut it down. I guess considering the format this will be in, because
Yeah.
it's going to be in August, we should be having BT13 out at that point.
Right.
At
Correct.
least like maybe like one deck comes to mind that could potentially stop it. But other than that, I feel like this is a really strange decision, especially since they just hit it in the normal format. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure what they're going for. Maybe they're testing to waters to see if they can potentially unhit it in the future or something.
Well, actually, okay. So now that I'm looking at this question, right? So it says the official banned and restricted list on our website still applies. So if Grand Kuwagamon is, at 1 on the official list, but it says it's unrestricted to 4 on this list, what's the consensus? Is it
I,
actually at unlimited, or is it not actually at 1?
I imagine it's unlimited because I
Okay.
imagine that these lists will overwrite um, the official list. Because otherwise, why would
Mm-hmm.
they have to specify that Grand Koaga is at 4?
Right. Okay. And so before, I do want to mention that Grand Kuwagamon, let's assume that it is at currently 4. Grand Kuwagamon is currently the only remnant of BT9 that is still viable in Ulti Cup, right? War Garurumon promo got hit. War Greymon lost access to Cool Boy, which is a really huge part of the deck. Like, yes, and also lost
Mhm.
Omni, so you can't OTK either. Grandis, to my knowledge, is the only BT9 deck, OTK style of deck, that was able to work without Cool Boy, right? So seeing as
Mhm.
their main facilitator for all of his damage is now back online at 4, hypothetically, I could definitely see Grandis being really strong. And I assume the one deck that would do absolutely fantastic into it, assuming is Belphemon, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I was pretty concerned about what I was going to play with
Yeah.
in this format, but then I realized, oh, I was probably going to play Belphemon for the BT13 format
Mm-hmm.
anyway, and so I'll probably just continue playing it going into Ultimate Cup, especially considering the other hits that we might have to talk about later down the line.
Yeah, and I don't want to spend too much time on Grandis Quagmon. So my last comment on it is going to be: this is probably the only uninteractive OTK deck currently in Ultimate Cup format. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it actually perform, despite not having received any support for multiple sets now.
That
And
might be like
mhm,
we might be saying that too quickly. There
yeah,
might be other lists that pop up. I imagine like All Force, even though it
hmm
requires more setup, was probably still gonna be played, and that
yeah,
can create an unreact or a hard to interact with
yeah.
OTK. As can Mirage, but Mirage takes even more setup to do it.
Well, so I think with Mirage, without training boost, I think Mirage gets a little bit harder to actually do all your setup, just because
That
you lose access to that consistency on that chambers, right?
that's fair, but the other
Mm-hmm.
like top decks that would have contested got hit,
Also got
and
hit.
so
Yeah.
I feel like it's like in that area where All
Mm-hmm.
Force is, where
That's fair.
because
Mm-hmm.
there's like so little competition at its level, it's going to rise to the top.
That's
I
fair.
feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna overtake All Force and take over its
So
position that All Force was in the previous Ulti Cups.
okay, so question: does Ulfor still retain its relevance? in this format, despite plants getting more support, specifically very good support, right? Because a lot of these cards are very anti-Ulforce. They're just plants in general, with Quartzmon still unlimited. Quartzmon being one of the biggest things to combat Ulforce, right? Now we also have access to the new Yoshino, Lala, Sunflow, and even this new Rosemont, which does very, very well into Ulforce, right? Prevents it, taps down one of your opponent's cards even after they suspend, right? So I feel like plants might be able to check Ulforce, but I think plants will definitely struggle to check Mirage. In comparison, just because it's not like you have to commit anything to the tap prior to dealing with the rest of the board. So you can go like Mirage Burst, bounce the quartz. Whereas with Ulforce, I mean, you have to suspend, and then unsuspend to get the bounce, right?
It's true. I didn't think about Quartz actually, maybe because I'm not a green player, but that might also be another reason why they felt comfortable on
Yeah.
hitting Grandkuwagamon, because it's an unsuspend
That is true.
strategy.
Yeah, Quartzmon is a anti-Grandkuwagamon card. Although there has been a few JP lists, and I say a few, I mean like one or two, where they go Grandis combo into Quartzmon. But enough of that. A card that is not on the list, but was on the list and is not mentioned on this list, which I think is weird, is Chaos Degradation. So
Yeah,
so
maybe because they were thinking that Chaos Degradation isn't doing much in the format outside of Ulti Cup, so maybe they're thinking of like it's not like an issue anymore.
right.
Um,
So Chaos Degradation. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was at 0 in the previous Ultimate Cup ban list, correct?
yeah, I think it was at one
It was at
actually.
1. Okay. So it was at 1, but now on this current list, it's not anywhere. It's not on the unrestricted, restricted, or straight out ban. So my question is, what is the status on Chaos Degradation? Are we to assume that it's unlimited?
I'm assuming it's unlimited.
Okay. So assuming that Chaos Degradation is unlimited, what changes in the format, right? Because it's not like Monstermon's viable. I guess you could play like some kind of Ophani loop style of deck, because that's probably the next best abuser for Chaos Degradation, right?
I imagine that like yeah, stuff like Ophani Loop is going to be like one of the only cards or one of the only decks that can
Yeah.
even abuse it in the monocolor format because the monocolor restrictions already heavily restrict the type of decks you can even
Mm-hmm.
run that in. Like security control, not really, because you're gonna have to run like specifically yellow purple cards,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So
Like specifically Mirai and
yeah,
or the Gato, which really heavily harms like your ability to run that card because those are Mirai is like a 5 cost tamer,
yeah.
which is pretty expensive, and then you really can't make use of her effect in monocolor format.
Okay, and then going into the restricteds, we do see Analog-Man getting hit. So Machinedramon finally getting the hammer, right? Machinedramon was one of those decks that overperformed like crazy in this most recent Ultimate Cup format. Absolutely a terror within the meta. Analog-Man being hit to 1. So I've played a lot of Machinedramon. I've played like quite a bit of Machinedramon at this point, and I will definitely say the Analog-Man hit is pretty big. It is like the biggest draw engine in the deck. Losing out on the Analog-Man means quite a few things actually. Number one, it means that you no longer can guarantee yourself at 2 memory as easily, which turns off a lot of your heavy mobile plays as well as Evo into your Chaosmon X sort of shenanigans that you could enable previously, as well as losing out on just free ways to ditch your pieces into the trash and then cycle out. And then the redirect, losing out on the redirect is really big. That means you can only now block once. So boards that go wide are even more potent against Machinedramon. So I think with the analog hit, I actually think that Machinedramon it will still hold some relevance, but I can definitely see it falling down into the tier 2 territory just because decks that go wide may just become too much of an issue at this point.
Yeah, that's true. I think with the hit to one, there's just a lot more ways that you can actually play around
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah, so not only is it speed, the speed is kneecapped, the consistency is kneecapped, it loses out to wide boards, but also plants, one of your hardest matchups, if not the hardest matchup in Ultimate Cup format, did just get a buff as well, and will likely be very popular. And then, after that, we do see BT12 Marcus actually getting hit. So the question is Shine dead?
Maybe not entirely, because we're
Mhm.
talking about BT13 Shine, by the way.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think this hurt is super warranted, even though if it feels a little preemptive, considering we haven't
Mhm.
gotten to BT13 yet.
Absolutely.
But this is a ban list for the 13 format, so this seems pretty warranted. I think I don't know if it's dead. It feels
Mhm.
pretty dead because this is that card is basically what makes that deck
Right.
like
It's what gave you
um
the unfair edge, right?
yeah. So I was gonna say the unfair edge over a lot of other
Mhm.
decks, but it even without it, there's still a lot of things that Shine has going for it.
Yeah.
But like a lot of that, a lot of what they can accomplish with their tools is enabled by Marcus.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I feel like it's probably going to fall off quite a bit
Yeah.
without the Marcus.
Yeah. I
Maybe
definitely.
they
Sorry.
can get away with running it
Mhm.
at one, but without like a consistent way of finding it because we don't have training or anything.
Right.
I think they're gonna have it's gonna be a big issue.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with that. I think that Shine is definitely going to suffer going into the Ultimate Cup format. I don't expect it to perform. Maybe like one or two, just because Burst Mode is that like good of a card. But even then, I'm very skeptical. And the following, do you want to take the lead on the discussion for the Imp on hits?
Yeah, this is massive, and I think
Mhm.
this is warranted too because Bales, even after the EX2 hit, did significantly well in the previous Ultimate Cups, and with all the other hits in mind, I think this is the hit the Slinger to one is pretty warranted in terms of wanting to keep Beals checked and
Mhm.
allow the Ultimate Cup to be a format where decks outside of what you normally see in normal format to thrive.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not sure if it's dead. I'm pretty sure you can still more or less play it. It's like
Really?
a similar situation to the Marcus hit,
Mhm.
where you're you're like mid tier two, low tier two. You're like
Right.
just barely playable even with these hits.
Okay. Okay.
And none of the things you're getting from BT13 are significantly helping you.
Yeah. So I definitely, my only thoughts on this matter, just because like I feel like you covered everything very well. Is that Beelzemon X is still a stupid card, and
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised to see if it like snaked its way into like higher tables off of that card alone.
Yeah, but they have to be much more luckier with
Yeah.
Slinger at one,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
For sure.
And the way you have to play is going to be a lot different too.
Mm-hmm.
Just like not having that ability to just high roll, you're going to be yeah. It's definitely a much more uphill battle to try to win with
Yeah.
Beals with these hits.
Yeah. Okay. And then moving on into Hydramon hit. Hydramon still at one, as we know, because Bloom Lord absolutely was the best deck in the original Ultimate Cup format. Despite the Hydramon hit, however, Plants got new support. Plants got an entirely brand new wave of support, plus a new 7 in the form of Rosemon Burst Mode. Um, I think having access to not only a new searcher, so bumping up the consistency to find the one of Hydramon, but also giving you a new 6 to help compensate for the loss of Hydramon, not only to mention that you still have Nidhoggmon. I think the Hydramon hit is definitely warranted, but I think plants are in much better shape than they were this format than they were last format. Plants look very, very good. I would not be surprised if plants actually ended up being the best deck in the Ultimate Cup format this time around. However, I say that with the caveat of Gallantmon also receiving a buff between this set and the previous set. Um, Gallantmon being the deck that absolutely decimated Bloom Lord. You have any thoughts on that, Tesero?
I also think that Belfamon personally has a pretty
True.
decent matchup into Bloomward, and
Mm-hmm.
that may be just because of my own biases, because of
Right.
like my own testing. Maybe that's not true in like the overall case
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have like the data to back that up that much yet.
Yeah.
But like in my personal experience, I think Belfamon does pretty decently
Yeah.
into Bloom.
And I definitely would agree that Balthamon, especially Rage Mode, right, being able to more or less nuke whatever board spawns out is really potent. My question is, having to rely on Gift of Darkness to actually delete their level 7, do you think this is reliable enough?
It depends on how often they go into level 7 in the first place, because level
Mm-hmm.
6s are popped by Kurata in the first place.
Right.
And so if and anyway, if you're popping everything else besides the 7, then
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to care that much about the 7 in the first place. If it's quartz,
Mm-hmm.
like sure you can't unsuspend, right? But
Right.
you probably don't mind that much because you can possibly just play another Belfie and keep stalling out turns
Mm-hmm.
for a while until you find an out anyway.
Okay, no, that's totally valid. And speaking of just green in general, while we're on this topic, I think Leopardmon is actually potentially really solid in Ultimate Cup format. I don't know about tier one, just because into decks like the Belphemon and like the Gallantmon, you're really going to struggle. But Leopardmon definitely has a little bit of a kick to it in this format, just because it is Bloom Lord with a higher potential damage output in a single turn. Right? It's much more caveman Bloom Lord, to be honest with you. But that is yet to be seen, since obviously it did not do very well in standard format, and we don't have any data on it in Ultimate Cup yet. But getting into the actually banned cards, HPD is at 0. We've been begging for this
Thank
since
the Lord.
1.5, and it has finally come true. That card can burn. Like, I hate that card with all my heart.
All these deserve to be at 0 from the start.
Yeah, it is.
So glad to see it.
It never should have been designed. That card has been a mistake since day one. Like, I'm glad. Like, I've seen a couple of comments that say HPD is a win more card, and to that I say you are crazy. That card single-handedly steals like games that you should not win. Like, it'll turn a losing position into a absolute steamroll position out of nowhere for no reason, by the way. Like, you could play absolutely out of your mind fantastically well, and then, I guess they found the HPD. They gained 5 memory? That's so quirky. Like, darn, Yeah.
It's part of the reason why I think that Beelzemon is at least marginally playable in this meta, is because you don't have to worry about Bloom Lords using HPD to outvalue you and just completely shut you off.
And then Cerberusmon Werewolf mode, same hit for we've had previously, turning off any loop shenanigans and stuff like that. I think that's totally valid for lower format, powered format like Ultimate Cup. You as the purple expert, do you have anything else you want to say about that?
It just ensures that people are playing new decks instead of just loop again.
Yeah.
And
this
opportunity to get us to play Belpha.
Yeah. And then the last hit, Death X, right? In a lower power format, not every deck has an out to Death X mon, unfortunately. So I think hitting it still is the correct call. But that being said, what decks, in your opinion, receive a buff in Ultimate Cup format now? Or like, what decks do you think will perform? If you had to say like the top few decks that will rise up.
Mirage, Bloom, and Belphi, I think, have a good opportunity to perform in this format.
Yeah, so I definitely think
those are the 3 that come to mind immediately.
Yeah.
Like, my mind isn't still fully awake because I haven't gone to sleep yet, so maybe after some retrospective thoughts, I can probably think of more decks. But at the current moment, those are the 3 that come to mind.
Yeah. So I do want to add on. I think Gallantmon is I think Gallantmon might also be like one of the biggest winners from this format. If I had to put my money on 2 decks winning Ultimate Cup, my money would go to Gallantmon or Mirage. That's where my money would lie. Simply because historically Belphemon doesn't do very well into Mirage, right?
What?
You think
does it?
In testing, it did pretty poorly, to be honest with you. Wait. Belphemon did poorly into Mirage. Did I say that? Did I say the other way?
Belphi does not super great into Mirage. I don't think it's a doomed matchup. I think it's
unfavored though, right?
Yeah, unfavored. Yeah. I think it's slightly unfavored for Belphi. I thought you said Gallant.
No. Gal.
Gal. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Into Galmon, I think it's Gal favored. Yeah. And I think Galmon is going to be a very popular deck that I think might hinder Belphemon's performance a little bit, to an extent, right? Obviously.
Yeah, I actually agree with that.
If you're not, especially if you're not super experienced with Belphemon, having a deck that is actively making you play against your win con is really annoying. So I think Mirage impact and popularity might have a direct correlation and effect on Belphemon. But what are your thoughts? Because I know Belphemon beats Bloom Lord. I agree with that. But how is Gallantmon? How do you think the Gallantmon matchup works out? Do you beat Gallant?
I believe I beat Gallant.
So
I'm not entirely certain, because I think it's like a matchup I don't think I've practiced all that much. I just based on what I know about the Belphemon or the Beelzemon versus Gallant matchup, I feel like there's not much that Gallant has that lets it get an advantage over the Belphemon matchup.
So question, right? is so with the Beelzemon slash Gallantmon dynamic. I mean, it really just boiled down to like Beelzemon was that much faster, right? Beelzemon was such a fast deck that even though your mechanic directly countered it, you can't see it, but I have air quotes. Despite countering it, it was too fast. Your Beelzemon X was online too early, and then you just took him out, right? That was the whole caveat to like that dynamic. But Belphemon is a marginally slower deck than Beelzemon was, right? Belphemon,
Marginally.
yeah,
It can still be pretty fairly fast
mhm,
if you like see your pieces early enough.
right.
But the other thing that like made the Gallant matchup difficult
Hmm.
or the Beals matchup difficult for Gallant is their lack of protection and the
Right.
fact that Beals has so much removal, and Belfa also just has quite a bit of like efficient removal.
Hmm.
Mostly like if they make Gallant, you can still pop it
Yeah.
with Kurata or Gift of Darkness,
Right.
and you lose so much tempo from you losing your big stacks because of how little, just like how slowly you build up stacks
Mhm.
as Gallant.
So I do want to bring up that that is very true, and I think that does stand true to an extent. But they did receive the new Guildmon that does have Rush. So I think, in my head, I think one of the win cons for Gallantmon could very well be swing BT2 Gallantmon, weirdly enough, and burn out your opponent for however much. Get them to the point where their security is at 0 or just low enough. Do that in a single turn, and then look for Guildmon Warp play, right? Because then that could be, or just Guildmon Hard Slime, right? Because that could be like the final nail in the coffin, you know?
Potentially, you
Yeah.
still have ways to play around that as Belfamon since you have ways
Right.
to stop attacks.
Yeah, of course.
And also, Belfa doesn't fill its trash nearly as fast as
Hmm.
Beals does.
Yeah.
So you're not like as vulnerable to the burn effects. You're still somewhat vulnerable because you
Hmm.
still fill the trash, but like nowhere near as much as Beals is.
Yeah. Definitely agreed. Okay, and then let's see. Does anything else rise to prominence? So I obviously we talked about Shine. Jesselmon's not doing anything. I think Ulforce is not really high on my list because of Green being so damn strong this Ultimate Cup format. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I think would really stick out. Does Ravemon get any like legs here? Do you think? No, probably not. Right?
Kind of,
You think
somewhat
so?
against. Yeah, I think the matchup against Belfi isn't entirely doomed because the
Hmm.
most other decks like draw so many cards that even with how much hand destruction Ravemon can represent, it's not enough to like completely shut off their turns.
Hmm.
With Belfamon, because you have actually a goal of cutting down your hand size, you actually get low enough where getting hit by those last few
Hmm.
bits of discard can put you to a scenario where you basically just don't have a hand enough to play the game.
Yeah. And
But
so, yeah.
that's like the one matchup. Everything else doesn't seem like it's Ravemon is
Hmm.
like a fast enough deck to do anything
Yeah.
against.
And so, really quick thought, Kuzahamon with Armor Engine, right? We've seen it here and there a little bit, but basically Kuzahamon, the combo is you Kuzahamon, you Kaiser Nail, and you play out Mermaidmon, right? And you play Mermaidmon and BT13 Magnamon, and then the Mermaidmon sucks up the Magnamon, gains 2 memory, so it becomes a 1-cost evolution, and then the Magnamon, BT13 Magnamon, spits out a new Vmon, and then you just extend your board like crazy. You can get out like 3 to 4 bodies in a single turn off your Kuzaha turn. And this is all doable with a blue base. Do we think this deck has any potential in Ultimate Cup format? Just being able to expand your board so wide.
I think it's too inconsistent. We don't have access to training to help us find the Kaiser
Mm-hmm.
nails.
Okay.
It definitely feels like the like a deck on the same tier as my mill deck, where
Yeah.
it might just not be like fast enough or
Yeah.
consistent enough against like most of like the actual like top tier threats,
Mm-hmm. And
like
then
Blue Mode and Alforce
yeah.
and Mirage.
Okay, and then Red Hybrid. Red Hybrid obviously didn't hit on this list. Red Hybrid performed very well last Ultimate Cup format. I can definitely see Red Hybrid doing pretty well this format as well. I don't think that would be too crazy out of the question. Although you're probably not super great into Belphemon.
It depends.
Hmm.
Like I guess like the one thing about Belfamon is that sometimes they just don't have like the efficient hands that get them to the Belfamon fast enough.
Yeah.
But you could say about like basically any deck
Hmm.
though. Like if they just don't see their win con, they can't win the game or
Right.
play the game. Um, yeah, so it's not like it. And uh,
Hmm.
Red Hybrid is pretty aggressive, so
Yeah.
occasionally they get to the point where they chip you down enough that even with Belfamon stopping one of your attacks, that's just one attack stop too little.
Okay, so I know combing through all the sets to see what else I think would be viable, but I think these 5 decks, if I had to say were the best 5 decks in Ultimate Cup format right off the bat, I think this would be my 5 personally. I'm not sure if you feel any differently, Tesero.
Mhm.
But no, like we discussed, Bloom Lord, brand new support. Quartzmon is still an absolute absurd powerful card. Belphemon, not a lot of decks can actually interact with sleep mode, so that'll definitely be a huge win condition for you. Red Hybrid is probably the most early aggressive deck in the format. Gallantmon, having received a lot of new support, including a Rush and this new BT13 Gallantmon, is in a position to do really well. And Mirage, with everything getting hit, it looking really good. So, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I think those are like basically the decks to watch for at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I know this was very impromptu, and thank you so much again for Tesero for answering my summon, even though he has yet to sleep. Absolutely power Chad. Definitely get some sleep. What the fuck?
Just a degenerate like that, I guess.
All right. But so before we wrap up the video, do you have anything you want to say?
Oh, good. Come watch my streams sometimes, please.
Yeah. Yeah, Tesero streams are actually very high quality. Definitely would recommend watching his streams if you want to improve your game, right? So thank you all so much for watching. Peace out.